Today we have Matt Pierce from Moneypenny VoiceNation, and he is going to about building a 24 by 7 sales contact center, the journey to get there, how to do that successfully, and it's really where we're going, where people, and we've talked about this a little earlier, is your decision makers are busy. They're not available when you need them to be available, so why not make it yourself always available, so when they pick up the phone, call, or when they send you a message, there's someone there to respond. And in that case, Matt Pierce, Moneypenny, and VoiceNation have done that for you. So Matt, thank you for being on this call. Thank you for talking about the subject. It's one that's near and dear to many people's hearts, and there's tons of questions about it. So thank you. Yeah, and to get started, not everybody knows about Moneypenny or VoiceNation. So give us an introduction of those two companies. What do they do? How do they work together? And also about your background, right? You're a leader in this space. Tell us how you got here, and then we'll kick it off with some questions.
Sure. So we'll start with kind of my background. So I have 2 degrees. One is in music education, and the second one is in music performance. So I use a lot of my teaching background in order to basically learn how people intake information and what they do with it and how to communicate in different ways, essentially. I also am known for kind of finding areas of opportunity and processes and being able to have a succinct way to address that. So that makes me really good at sales. So I've had a wide gamut of experience in multiple industries, made a name for myself across all in different levels, essentially. So got my start and cut my teeth in logistics, which was just straight cold calling, building your own full book of business and its full sales cycle. So I'm completely aware of what it takes in order to gain a client initially, make that client happy, onboard that client, and keep them happy. I've done SaaS sales where, fly and do presentations, things like that, to really discuss ROI and get an insight into the intent for marketing that a business may be doing, and also how we can basically cater to that and make sure you're getting a larger ROI. So that brings me to money. My previous role was with Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So I was in charge of one of the larger stores in the southeast of the United States. So I made a name for myself by really blowing revenue goals, targets, and customer service targets out of the water. When I say out of the water, think 160, 150% of quota. And what I did was basically think outside the box and trained and invested in my sales team. And I really just bought into them and I poured everything I had into my people. That resulted in not just my store being successful and with the revenue and all of that stuff and making people's paychecks better, but I'm more proud of the promotion percentage that I had. Out of all the staff that I had, I was like 75% of my people are now branch managers or in another department for enterprise. So I'm very proud of that fact. That brought me to Moneypenny and VoiceNation just with my skill set. So essentially what we are, I know that the term 24/7 call center is very vague and all-encompassing, right? So it's very important that when you are making a connection with a vendor for a call center, and I'll talk about why you don't want to necessarily build it internal, but you need to understand who you are dealing with and what you are looking to get out of it. That is vital, right? So somebody may be a leader in cold calling down a list that you provide, right? Some people may be an extension for customer service. Where we've made our niche and carved our path in the industry is essentially honing our training and how we are able to repeat processes in a contact center. So what that means is whenever someone reaches out to your business, whether it's through telephone, whether it's live chat, or whether it's on the back end following up with inquiries, we are experts at taking that information, getting it over to you, working those leads while they're piping hot. That way they don't die on the vine, and in impacting your ROI, your customer service, and your sales revenue in a meaningful way. Moneypenny is more UK oriented, right? So we can take the UK calls, and it's more of a bespoke, tailored approach. VoiceNation would be more US based, simple message taking, forwarding, getting the notes over to your team. But we can mix and match. It's one of the great things of being a dual branded company. So that's how I got there, and I'm looking forward to using my experience and talking you through how we can impact your numbers.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that background. To get started, let's talk about the blueprint for success. How do you create a successful 24 by 7 contact center for your business? Matt, can you explain how you guide clients through the process of establishing their relationships with a 24 by 7 contact support center early on?
Sure. So I think it's very important that we listen, actively listen, right? So in sales, a lot of times it's easy to listen to respond. One of the things that makes it so powerful is listening to understand. So we're going to establish how we can be a resource for your business, particularly. So we're focused on your ROI and your marketing efforts and the speed response for your sales teams, right? Essentially, whenever someone reaches out, you got to understand, you got to stop them in their sales cycle and be the first one to reach out. So basically, initially, we're going to learn what efforts you have in place and how you track the successes and failures. Then we fit our expertise in the contact service space to enhance the areas that may need it. We then work with our clients to prioritize their wants. So, what are you wanting to achieve, right? So, more efficiency, more leads, higher revenue, 24/7 visibility for your client base, whatever the case may be. And we work hand in hand with your clients to track analytics that we can provide to you and how we're getting that information over to your sales team in a meaningful way. So, if we need to adjust, we can adjust in the same way that a client would if the call came directly for them, and then we explain our next steps to our client about what will happen step by step as we build out our solutions and ensure that they understand how to use the tools and the resources that we offer.
And what advice do you have for your clients to help build a solid foundation as they're building out this 24 by 7 contact support center?
Sure. So, aside from doing your research and knowing exactly what you're looking for in a service, set expectations early with what you expect from that service. So, know what you want and what you expect, and ask questions early and often about follow up processes. Assume you're talking to someone who doesn't know how to sell your product or service every single day. So, think about every possible scenario and how you would handle each scenario, because that's essentially going to make or break the success of your relationship with your 24/7 contact center. We're there to be an extension of your business.
And you made a really good point earlier, and I want to revisit that one more time about aligning your goals with their goals to ensure you have a successful 24 by 7 contact center solution. So what is the best
Mhm.
strategy you found to get alignment between what they're thinking about and what you can provide to get the results that they're looking for?
Sure. So I think it's all about efforts and timelines, right? So if someone goes, my goal is to improve our revenue by 30% over the calendar year. So that sounds great. That's a good idea. How do you track success, and how do you know that's a good number to be at that 30% growth, right? Then we talk internally about your current setup. What does your team look like as far as taking inbound calls? Are they available 24/7? What's your response time? That is a huge question, right? So if I'm interested in Steven's business and I reach out, but it takes Steven 48 hours to reach out to me, you're not going to win my business. I've already moved on, right? So essentially, getting those goals, learning the internal structure, and then we talk about our services, how we can get information over to you quickly in a way that you can set expectations with your internal sales teams and monitor that turnaround, so that if you expect 5 touches in 7 days, then you can monitor that easily with your internal systems and CRMs, whatever the case may be, or with the reporting that we provide you free of charge. But essentially, knowing that, if I'm going to throw a stat out there, most businesses answer 65% of their calls, no matter how busy they are. So think about whenever you call your bank and how long you're on hold, how frustrating that is. You probably hang up, right? You're not
Yeah.
going to leave a voicemail. Less than 11% of people are going to leave a voicemail. That's just the way it is. And that number's actually trending down over the last several years. So what we do is we say, okay, if we can guarantee that we're going to answer 100% of your calls every single time, and we're going to be consistent in the way that we answer that call. So if you've got multiple offices, multiple brands, franchise owner, whatever it looks like, you're going to get the same experience and the caller's going to get the same experience. We can ensure brand consistency, get the information over to the party as quickly as possible, and the customer has stopped their buying cycle and they're just waiting for a response from your team. So at that point, you got all the information, and they're no longer cold calling or playing phone tag with people trying to spin the sales cycle. You are passing over warm, hot, qualified leads to your experts at selling. So you will reach your targets, and we can do the metrics over the lifetime of the metrics analytics over the lifetime of your time as a client. It's all real time.
That is a great playbook that you've broken apart, how to align with the client goals, how to go above and beyond to align with the delivery, the operation, getting them to where they need to be. As you've done many of these 24 by 7 solutions, contact center solutions, I am sure there's some mistakes that has happened, some things that have gone wrong. What kind of recommendations do you have for people not to do those same mistakes, right? What kind of mistakes have you seen out there, and how do you recommend that people don't do those as they're trying to build out their 24 by 7 contact center solution?
Sure. So initially, let's talk about the relationship part of that question, right? So you need to ask questions of your provider and make sure that it's a good fit. So ask questions like, hey, how often can I make changes? Am I charged to make those
Mm.
changes? Because essentially it's a script. It's a living, breathing document for us as a business. We understand that we are an extension of your business, so we're not simply a third party. You need to understand what that company does well. You need to ask questions on what you're able to do, the reporting you're going to receive, how easy it is to get that, and ask things like, what am I charged for? If I added a product or a service and I wanted to add that into the scripting, would you charge me for that? What's the turnaround time to make those changes? But essentially, in a nutshell, the major things to focus on, common mistakes, is the initial the initial thought of my 24/7 call center partner, contact center partner is not going to be an industry expert and be able to sell my product the way my team does. And you're 100% right. But it is also true that we don't need to be. We are experts in concisely getting the information that means something to you, getting that caller either over to your team while they're in the market with that warm heart lead, or getting the information over to your team with a time that caller is available. So the mistakes are assuming that we can't work for you because we are not an industry expert. We will do exactly what you tell us to do and the way you tell us to do it 100% of the time. The other thing is understanding, hey, there may be changes, right? So you could have the world's best VoiceNation Moneypenny onboarder to go over your scripting and set up your account. You could have your best director of operations to go over that scripting and say, okay, we've thought of everything. There will be some caller at some point in time that will call in and will break the system. Either ask a question that hasn't been answered. We will handle it professionally as much as possible, but we will then reach out to you because, again, with the relationship, we will reach out and you say, hey, Mr. Steven, we actually got this question, this inquiry type. How would you want us to address it moving forward? So we're always,
Collaborative.
yes, it's very collaborative, but you need to understand that at least initially, there will be bumps in the road, and that we are trying our best to learn as quickly as possible and to train our team appropriately. The other obstacle is worried about is worried about the planning of what plan works best for me, right? So everyone bills separately. I know some providers in my industry will bill per call or per minute, again, with a question asking, how are you going to bill me? But you need to understand that whenever you've got somebody who really cares about the client relationship part of it, the way we do billing is very flexible. We don't do contracts for the very reason of you may be missing more calls than you anticipate, especially if you, Mr. Owner, don't even track how many calls you're getting or missing, right? If you've got no metric or way of tracking that information, we won't know until you're live and you're catching 100% of those
Yeah.
calls. So you can move your plan accordingly, right? So if Steven comes on and he's at 1,000 minutes for math's sake to cover his team and his business, but within 2 months we're realizing what we're answering 1,400, 1,500 minutes worth of calls. We will reach out, Mr. Steven. Hey, looks like there's been a trend over the last several months. Is this a one-off? Is this your busy season? And if it makes financial sense, we would say, hey, Mr. Steven, I would suggest you move up a plan in the meantime so that we can meet the quota and you're not getting hit in the head with overage fees, right? Or conversely, if you're at 1,000 minutes and it's your slow season, you can make that decision to say, I need less minutes. So there's the flexibility piece. So understanding that you can make changes the same as you would with your business. It's just the communication piece. Oftentimes people don't communicate
Yeah.
as they need to.
And you've been thorough to explain that part, and that's true. Let's jump into, we talked about blueprints a little bit, and you gave great advice there. Technology. What technology stack would you suggest to clients or recommend to clients for working in tandem with their call center operations efficiency? Yeah, what's the stack that you recommend?
Sure. So it all depends on what you're doing, what your team is, right? And what your internal structure is. Do you guys work in a CRM, sales off Salesforce, things like that, HubSpot? Ask your provider if they integrate with it and what that may look like. Essentially, we can do any and everything. We can either log in and do the integrations piece that way. You can give us a login, like a general login, where we can work directly into the system and do it that way, or we can just pass the information over to your internal team. So that's a little kind of an ambiguous question. The tools that I would say from my personal experience that are great, Jotform is a really cool tool that we suggest to our clients, because if you're just wanting simple data fields, essentially name, number, phone number, or sorry, first name, last name, phone number, business, reason for calling, availability for follow-up call, things of that nature, Jotform, depending on volume and the complexity of the data you're gathering, you can basically set up your connection from Jotform to your CRM.
Yeah.
A lot of the times that's a free service. And then whenever the agent on our side hits the button to forward your business that information to the email you provide, if it's the same email that you've got in Jotform, that correlation between Jotform and your system will auto-populate into your CRM. So you don't have to do anything any different.
Yeah.
From a sales perspective, like how I monitor my team is things like Salesforce and SalesLoft. They're great for working through data quickly. So it's easy to pull reports for me to see how my team's working data, and it's easy to track if those tasks are being done on time. So ask questions about how the contact center operates. Make sure that you've got something in place, because what we don't want to happen is your sales team gets inundated with leads and they can't work them in a timely cadence, so they die on the vine. That's very important that you have that in place.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. In the same vein of questions, how do you ensure clients maintain data security and privacy within their technology solutions?
Sure. We're compliant in many areas. We do a lot of business in the healthcare and legal sectors, so there's a necessity for that. We work with clients in onboarding to ensure that our agents won't see any internal access to anything outside of the form fill that they want us to do, or a calendar that we're going to book appointments with. And we also limit the login to the CRM if the client chooses to have us log in directly. It's very much you can only see this page. From an internal perspective, we do training every single year just to ensure that we understand data integrity. We don't hold any customer information internally. It's not on a hard drive somewhere. And we do one-way call recordings, so we're not holding recordings from your customers calling and giving sensitive information. So that's, in a nutshell, how we would ensure your data security.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And this is a good question around AI. And can you discuss a little
Hmm.
bit role of AI in automation in the contact center relationship? Is that something that will reduce the amount of people that are needed to run a 24/7 operation, or will it catch up ever? What's your thoughts on that?
Sure. So ever and never are very hard terms to use in anything in
Yeah.
business. It's hard to say those two words, but essentially, currently as it stands, I'll talk about how we operate, why we operate that way, and our 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan. So essentially, we use live agents to handle inbound calls and live chat. Why? Because it's as quick as the AI. The response time is immediate. It's not minutes, but also we're using the information that you give us and we can fact check and make sure that we are tactful in the way that we engage with your client. So it's not just an automated response that may be out of place, that may need addressing and tweaking down the line. Uh, we can improve automated responses to give the caller time. Basically the same way that you would if you were in your company. So think about emails. So we can automate reports and how you get reports to your clients. We are currently building out some AI chat responses and AI generated email responses. If you were to need an outbound team and it's part of that cadence to email who you're targeting, there may be some AI generated email responses to go out, but essentially you would still want eyes on that at some point just to make sure that you've got that brand consistency and you're getting the message across that you want to get across. But yes, we are working on it ourselves and to use AI in a live chat and email response manner.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that with us. Um, I'm going to ask another one. What are the most common technology challenges your clients encounter, and how do you help them address these as they're trying to build a 24/7 operation?
Sure. So essentially, web forms and integrations. So web forms are very easy to do if you're using them internally. It's a very easy process for us. We make it as easy and seamless as possible. So as we learn a little bit about your current setup, your wants, your needs, and how you operate, we will ask, do you guys work in mainly web forms? Is there an integrated CRM? Whatever the case may be. We then take a look at that link to see if it's something that's teachable. Is it safe for us to do? Is it something that's repeatable for us? If it is, and it meets the requirements from our operational side of things, it's very easy. Essentially, we either integrate with your integrations. We can do Zapier integrations or things like Jotform. We can even tie in directly through API connections, or we suggest workarounds, things like the login that I mentioned previously, with a general login where essentially we can log in and to that web form directly and access information. So we that's the most common technological challenges that we see our clients, but we've been able to work around all of them and provide solutions.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And the more you speak and the more you give your answers, the more impressed I am with your organization. You do a fabulous job, and you have the talent to do this so well. Talking about some challenges, continue down this path, just that way people can learn from other people's mistakes and not have to do it. Staffing a 24/7 operations is a significant challenge. How do you help clients manage this kind of aspect?
Sure. So I'm going to do it 12 times today, Stephen, whenever I'm done with this call. But essentially, it's what we do as a resource in general, right? So whenever you are talking about potentially staffing people to answer your phone calls, you have to take into account you're paying someone a salary, you're paying someone benefits, you've got insurance, they will call out sick, they will ask for time off, and they need to sleep. I've yet to meet an employee that can work 24/7.
Maybe
So
one night, but
essentially, maybe,
maybe
yeah,
one
yeah.
night.
So, so essentially, what we provide is 24/7 coverage. You're only paying for the plan that you're on, so we are literally think 15%, 20% of what you would spend monthly on an employee, right? Or a team of employees, depending on the scale of what you're needing. But the way we staff to make sure that you're ready for your peak times is we pay attention to your analytics and your reporting. Chanel is our director of operations, and she's 25 years plus in the contact center space, right? She hired VoiceNation for her company before she moved over, but she's consistently looking at reports and when your peak call times are, right? So if you need more coverage at 9 p.m., she will stagger the scheduling to make sure that you have the coverage that you need whenever you are busy. She does that on the daily, so it's not necessarily set 8, 9 hour, and then the next team would come in for 8, 9 hour basically shift. It's staggered so that there's always coverage. There is no gaps, and if we need to, if we were to bring on like a larger account, she will hire appropriately to make sure we are able to do what we say we can do.
Yeah, she valuable resource, and yeah, that helps a lot. Now, training wise, I know that's a concern for people is they hire and then they're like, oh, we got to train these people. But what processes have you put in place to be able to, or what training do you recommend companies do in the beginning, throughout, how often, to ensure that your sales reps are best trained on the product and services?
Sure. And let's talk about internally first, right? And then I'll talk about the training that should happen on the buyer side of things, the client. Internally, anytime we get in a larger account or something that is out of the norm in any way, shape, or form, we will go to our training room. We will bring all of our agents in and show them the expectation, what that call handling will look like for that particular account. That way they feel comfortable with it, and whenever they are live and it's your customer, it's not the first time that they're coming across it. We do that. We do regular reviews, quarterly reviews, and like I said, with any new account, you can rest assured that every agent that will be handling that call has seen your setup. I've actually got one in what 3 hours from now that we're already training. We're doing a follow up call. That's another thing that I would ask of your relationships with your vendors is schedule follow up times so that you know what's going on and how they're treating your account. We are wide open, always available, open door policies. We do hands-on training with our agents ourselves. For your sales team, what I suggest and what I did with my own sales team is a do one, show one, teach one approach. So essentially, whenever we get information over to you, you will need to train up your sales team on who is going to follow up on those leads, when they're going to follow up, and how. So, as the managers, upper management, you would want to make sure that you understand the process and what that's going to look like. So, you would do one for your team. The person you're showing, have them do one to follow up on that lead and what that process looks like. Show one of their teammates how to do that so that they're teaching and also they will learn more through teaching someone. And then teach another teammate, have that person, the second person, teach another teammate. So it's basically making sure that everyone understands the full complexity of what a follow-up process and that the expectations are, right?
Right.
Even as critical as, hey, I've take this information, I put it in my name in the CRM. I am to call this person within an hour of the time I get the lead, and the second call happens either 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever that may look like. But setting that expectation early, that would be my recommendation.
Oh, that's, yeah, that you make valuable points that people are going to come back, and as they're trying to set up their own 24/7 operation, come back, listen to playback, contact you. I hope they do that as they're going through this investigative phase and how they're learning
Mhm.
more. A little bit about, and this was a question we discussed a little earlier about team burnout. How do you advise clients to handle team burnout and maintain motivated with this 24 by 7 operation when it could be a little strenuous and maybe inconvenient?
Yeah, so essentially, we wouldn't have any burnout issues because, again, with the staggered scheduling, what we do, another good question to ask of your vendors is about culture. What is your culture?
That's
What
a
is
great
your
one.
retention?
Yeah.
What is your retention time? So I'm going to go ahead and pat myself on the back again, or our company. So we really focus on doing right by our employees to make sure they are happy and make sure that they have all the tools they need to be successful. We have internal trainings. There's mentorship for promotions. We are consistently creating opportunities for internal promotions, but we really just buy in and invest into our employees. And we make sure that we have things like a wellness room. So if someone were to get off of a less than fun call with an upset client or with an upset caller for a client, and they really need to take a breather, they can go into a quiet space, meditate, be on their phone, whatever they need to do in order to get their mind. That way they can come back ready to do the job that we expect and that you expect as the client, right? Putting that in place. Now, I do want to talk about from an external how a sales team you could avoid burnout. I think too often, especially as we're getting younger and younger sales staffs, we tend to focus too much on quantity and not quality. I can say back in my day, I'm at a certain age where I can say that, but back in my day, it was you have to make 200 to 300 calls a day because you all know, guys, sales is a numbers game. Calls will equal appointments, appointments will equal conversions, whatever the case may be. It's not that the younger generation works less hard, it's that they have to work smarter, right? So, yes, we had to make our 300 calls, but also people didn't have caller IDs. They had to answer the phone to figure out who was calling them. So, we had a little bit better opportunity to actually speak with someone. Now, it's an instant gratification world and they want the answer and they want it quickly. There's no longer a world of give me your 2 minute elevator pitch. It has to be 20 seconds or less to catch someone's attention. So they're working that skill set in a little bit tougher market, honestly, than what we had. But what I would say in order to avoid burnout is really buy into your team and build them up. So if you've got a large potential prospect on the books and you've got a sales rep that is going to sit that and might close it, rather than have senior sales management sit on that call because that's going to make your sales reps feel like they can't do the job or that you don't have the faith in them to close that deal. Rather than do that 24 hours, 12 hours before the call's supposed to happen, pull them in. Hey, tell me about this situation. What are their needs? What are their pain points? What coaching do you need from me? And then be affirmative. So essentially, hey, Steven, I know you're going to crush this call. Let me know how it goes. Do you need anything in the meantime? Is there anything we can do to make it even easier for you to kill it?
Yeah.
So you're buying in and they're going to feel valued, right? That's huge.
Yeah, that's big. Man, your wealth of knowledge in this area, not only of understanding it, but applying it and then managing it in such a great way with very impressed. I'm going to jump a little bit because of time to talk about some success stories. I'd
Hmm.
love to know some success stories where you've helped clients transform their services with a 24 by 7 contact center solution. Any case
Hmm.
studies you could give us that will enlighten those looking for such a solution and also provide a path of how to do it?
Sure. So we have a client where we're a preferred vendor called ServPro. So essentially, they are in the disaster recovery space. So if you want to talk about pressure,
Yeah, that's big. That's
they
big.
they have pressure because you got to think their customer base, their callers are not happy. They don't have a long buyer cycle. So essentially, they have a need. My house is flooding. I've got burn, smoke damage, and they're calling somebody to help them right there. So their expectation is that they answer those calls, number one, but also that they get the information over, especially after hours, right? So they needed calls put to their on-call team. What their issues were was straight volume, right? So think about the locations that are in hurricane zones or tornado zones. There's literally natural occurrences that makes that client busier than expected, and they could never ever take all of those calls themselves. So what they did is they worked with us. We built out a way. Okay, what is the information expectation that you would like? Do you want us to filter out the emergency versus non-emergency calls because their setup is after hours? I only want my on-call team to deal with emergency calls, and the phone, and you guys can tell the client if it's a non-emergency. We've got your information here. Thank you so much for reaching out. We will follow up with you first thing in the morning. So you've already stopped that buyer cycle, but you're only getting over the emergency calls to that on call team. That way they're not stressed out trying to answer every single phone call and dealing with things that are not emergencies whenever they've got a real event that they're working on. So essentially, they're think on an average each job is $10,000 to $15,000 of income for them. Potentially, when you're missing a phone call, because the caller again is going to go somewhere else, you're missing $15,000 per phone call, and you're hurting your brand by not being able to answer that. So potentially negative reviews. So what we've done and why we're such a success story for that is we've basically ensured brand consistency for them. They do answer every phone call. They're able to follow up within an hour, 2 hours, depending on the location and their expectation with that client, with the caller. And they're able to significantly bump up their revenue targets because they know that they're getting all those calls.
Right.
So they're growing their business. They're staffing more people. It's creating more jobs. Their customer service has skyrocketed because they're not having to call in. They're not frustrated with getting looped into a phone system. They're asking their questions. We're getting the information over to the right people, and those right people are following up with the customer as quickly as possible. That's the best success story I could possibly imagine.
That's a great success story. And as we're coming to the end here, you've been fabulous. I hope those listening have a chance to reach out to Matt, and especially the ones that will be listening, because a lot more of you will be listening. Reach out, get advice on how to set up a call center, a 24/7 contact center. And it's so fortunate to have one of the experts here with us. This is a great opportunity. He's open to be able to connect with people. Please do that. Matt, if you have any last words of advice for people that, there's so much we could have talked about that we didn't talk about, but if you had any lasting words that you wanted to mention, what would they be?
Sure. So essentially, I'm not a big stats guy, but I do need to give you some stats. I want to leave you with stats.
Oh, great.
So did you know that 26% of inquiries, whether it's B2B or B2C backgrounds, happen out of normal business hours?
That's 26%.
So 26% of inquiries,
Yeah.
not all calls, inquiries, good, valid leads,
Yeah.
happen out of hours. So if you're not staffed or you're relying on your voicemail, you are missing business. Let's talk about buying cycles for a second. Over 86% of buyers are going to research more than one option. 67% of the time, they're going to choose the first option, or they're going to choose the option they spoke to first, not looked at first, spoke to. You have to answer your phones because your competitors will. According to our global communications trends, 38% of people say that they would go elsewhere following a poor call experience. That same 38% amount said that they would make a complaint, and nearly 25% of those callers would write a negative review. We're in an instant gratification world environment, a climate now. So essentially, my advice would be to look into my service or a service similar, hopefully ours. But essentially, you need to have that brand consistency to know that you are going to grow because you're answering every opportunity. You're going to catch that buyer in their buying cycle before they get a chance to go to a competitor, and you're protecting your brand and helping your customer service on the back end. It is a win and a huge return on your marketing ROI.
Yeah. No, those are great stats, a great way to end the call. I appreciate all of those listening. I appreciate your participation. You are a strong manager, leader, sales champion in this space. And more importantly, you listen to what people have to say and align with their goals. Great qualities. Very impressed with you and your organization, and I'll highly recommend it to people. So thanks for taking the time, Matt, for being here. Thanks to the audience for listening. We appreciate it. And then we have a couple more speakers. But if you have questions, feel free to reach out to Matt anytime directly. And Matt, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. So my email, I can respond to that very quickly, is going to be matt.pierce@voicenation.com.
Matt.pierce@voicenation.com. Perfect.
Yep, matt.pierce@voicenation.com.
So thanks, everybody.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt.
Everyone.